there's one thing we've learned from diving deep into the horror franchises we love, whether it's the twisted lore of Predator, the supernatural terror of It, or the psychological games of Dexter, it's that sometimes the scariest stuff never actually makes it to the screen, and that's especially true with Pennywise. Now, we've all seen Bill Skarsgård's incredibly creepy portrayal of the dancing clown in the recent films, and we've definitely seen the OG Tim Curry version that traumatized an entire generation, but here's the thing. Those adaptations, as brutal as they are, don't even scratch the surface of what Stephen King actually wrote in that massive 1,138-page novel. The book is absolutely packed with kills that are so disturbing, so visceral, and so deeply horrifying that we genuinely understand why filmmakers have chosen to either tone them down, reimagine them entirely, or just flat out leave them on the cutting room floor. In this video, we want to take you on a deep dive into Pennywise's most memorable, most brutal, and most unadapted murders from the It novel. Before we get into this explanation, we have a very short request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Georgie Denbrough, the arm ripping that started it all. Okay, let's start with the kill that sets the entire tone for the novel, the death of 6-year-old Georgie Denbrough. Now, we know the movies show this, and it's absolutely horrifying, but the book description is something else entirely. In the novel, after Pennywise lures young Georgie into the sewer with his red balloon and the promise of a place where you'll float too, the clown doesn't just grab him and drag him down. Instead, what happens is far more visceral and brutal. Georgie reaches into the storm drain to retrieve his paper boat. When Pennywise emerges, the creature grabs Georgie's arm and rips it completely off. The text doesn't shy away from it. King writes this moment with devastating clarity, describing how Georgie experiences this searing, ripping noise and a sheet of agony before everything goes dark. The kid literally bleeds out right there in the rain, his arm torn clean off, with no one there to help him. What makes this even more disturbing is that Stephen King explained his motivation for opening the novel this way: grief. This entire first section of the book is about how the loss of Georgie fundamentally breaks Bill and his family. Bill's parents are so consumed by their grief that they almost completely ignore their surviving son, pushing Bill into the shadows of his own home. It's the emotional and narrative foundation that makes everything that follows matter. The movies get that the opening is supposed to be horrific, but the raw, unfiltered description of a child's arm being ripped off in the novel is really something else. Betty Ripsom, the girl in the sewers. Let's talk about Betty Ripsom. Now, if you've seen the recent It films, you might recognize the reference. The losers find Betty's shoe deep in the sewers with her name written inside, but the movies give you almost nothing about what actually happened to her, and the novel is absolutely brutal. Betty was a 14-year-old girl who went missing just after Christmas, killed by Pennywise during one of his active cycles in Derry. And according to the novel and the hints from various scenes, her death wasn't quick or merciful. In fact, the implication is that Pennywise ripped her torso completely in half. We're talking about the full bisection of a child's body. When Beverly is going through the sewers, she hears Betty's voice among the other victims calling out to her, which is terrifying enough, but knowing what actually happened to her makes things a lot more traumatic. That's why the filmmakers only gave us the shoe, and they never showed us what happened to Betty, because showing that on screen would be crossing a line, even for an R-rated horror film. Patrick Hockstetter, death by leech swarm. Patrick Hockstetter's death in the novel is so grotesque, so uncomfortably detailed, that it stands out even in a book full of horrific moments. And here's the thing, Patrick isn't even a victim we're supposed to like. He's a literal child sociopath who smothered his own infant brother by shoving his face into a pillow when he was just 5 years old, and he spent his life torturing animals as a way to recapture that feeling of power. Patrick keeps this old abandoned refrigerator in the dump where he kidnaps neighborhood pets and does unspeakable things to them. It's his private torture chamber, and one day, when he goes to clean it out because he's worried Henry Bowers is going to expose him, he opens the door to find a swarm of flying leeches. Demonic, parasitic creatures that are literally a part of Pennywise. These leeches start attacking him and draining his blood. One lands on his arm, and Patrick watches in horror as he sees its proboscis penetrate his skin and start sucking the life out of him. Another leech flies directly into his mouth and starts draining his tongue. Some of them burst from consuming too much blood. Leeches are crawling all over his body, his eye, inside his mouth, and Patrick is experiencing this extreme loss of blood, getting lightheaded, feeling the draining sensation without even the mercy of pain, just the terror and awareness of what's happening to it. And while all of this is going on, while Patrick is being attacked by this swarm of parasitic nightmares, a human-like creature drags him away into the barrens, towards the sewers. When Beverly witnesses this from hiding, she finds Patrick's wallet and his shoe afterward, but the body is gone. The only thing left is the knowledge that something absolutely catastrophic happened to him down there. The Frankenstein Killings, Victor Criss and Belch Huggins. Now, if we're talking about brutal kills that never made it to the screen in their full glory, we have to talk about Henry Bowers' gang and what happens to them in the sewers. In the movies, Victor and Belch's deaths are almost afterthoughts, quick, brief, and not particularly memorable. But in the novel, Stephen King turns their deaths into something genuinely disturbing. Let's start with Victor Criss. Victor is actually one of the more interesting characters in the novel because he almost had a redemption arc. He'd actually been considering breaking away from Henry and the gang to join the Losers Club, but instead, he makes the mistake of following Henry into the sewers. Pennywise is waiting in one of its most iconic forms, Frankenstein's monster. As Victor confronts this Frankenstein version of it, the creature doesn't just kill him, it decapitates him. There's no supernatural explanation, no elaborate torture. It's just a monster using brute force to rip Victor's head clean off his shoulders. Then there's Belch Huggins. Belch is this massive kid, incredibly strong and incredibly loyal to Henry. But when he encounters the same Frankenstein form that killed Victor, he actually fights back. He tries to defend himself and even tries to protect Henry, but Pennywise doesn't take kindly to resistance. Instead of a quick death like Victor, Belch gets severe facial mutilation. We're talking about Pennywise peeling the flesh and skin off the left side of his face down to the skull. It's absolutely grotesque and horrific. The kind of targeted, intimate violence that shows Pennywise is playing with his victims, not just disposing of them. What makes these deaths even more significant is what happens after. Henry is so traumatized by watching his friends die in these horrific ways that he completely loses his grip on reality. He runs deeper into the sewers, absolutely unraveled, and eventually escapes into the river where he's found by locals. The psychological impact of witnessing those deaths compounds the horror. Henry doesn't just see his friends die, he sees them die in ways so brutal and grotesque, completely breaks him. Adrian Mellon, Pennywise's influence on humanity. Here's a kill that's really interesting because Pennywise doesn't even do it directly, but the entity's influence absolutely does. Adrian Mellon is introduced at the very beginning of It, Chapter 2 in the films, and his death is portrayed as a hate crime, a homophobic attack that seems disconnected from Pennywise itself. But in the novel, it's much more insidious than that. Adrian Mellon is a childlike, asthmatic gay man who loves to perform and enjoy life despite his circumstances. He's killed on the night of the Canal Days Festival, which is a ritualistic celebration in Derry that has deep connections to Pennywise's cycles. He's beaten by homophobic locals, thrown off the Main Street Bridge, and left to bleed out in the river below. It seems like an unfortunately standard hate crime, but the novel makes one thing clear. This is the influence of it. The detective investigating Adrian's case is actually the son of the man who discovered Georgie Denbrough's body years earlier, creating this cyclical thread of its violence repeating through Derry's history. Adrian's death isn't presented as a quick, flashy kill from Pennywise. Instead, it's a slow, brutal murder by human beings who are being subtly influenced and corrupted by its dark presence in the town. It's a different kind of horror, the horror of how evil can turn communities into killing machines, how Pennywise doesn't need to do everything itself when it can corrupt the humans around it. The hidden victims. Children we never know. The novel also references multiple other victims that we never get detailed deaths for, but the implications are absolutely horrifying. There are children who go missing before the main events of the novel, children who are killed in cycles that predate even our main story. We hear references to Betty Ripsom, to the Ripsom siblings, to kids who simply vanish or are found drowned in canals or waterways. One particular victim that haunts the novel is a child who was found drowned in a frozen canal, a mummy-like figure that appears to Ben Hanscom as one of his fears. These are kids who have no names, no real characterization. They're just the background noise of Pennywise's centuries-long cycle of violence in Derry. They're mentioned almost in passing in the novel, but the cumulative effect is devastating. There are dozens, maybe hundreds of dead children across the decades, all serving its hunger. The broader horror, understanding Pennywise's depravity. What really gets us about these unadapted kills is how they paint a picture of Pennywise as something far more evil and far more creative in its brutality than the films can really show. In the movies, Pennywise is scary because it's a supernatural entity that can shapeshift and is fundamentally evil. But in the novel, there's this detailed exploration of how it kills. The methodology, the psychological torment, the way each death is tailored to maximum horror. Pennywise understands its victims' fears and uses them, but it also understands how to make dying as horrible as possible. The entity doesn't just kill, it torments, it toys, and it savors. Why weren't these adapted? So here's the real question. Why didn't these kills make it to the screen? Well, there are a few practical reasons. First, many of these deaths happen to characters who aren't central to the main narrative, which means spending time on their detailed deaths might distract from Bill, Beverly, Eddie, and the rest of the club's journey. In a film or miniseries, you have limited time, and focusing on side characters' graphic deaths doesn't always serve the main story. Second, there's the matter of content standards and audience expectations. Showing a 14-year-old girl being ripped in half on screen is going to get a movie flagged, banned, or heavily cut. It's the kind of content that, while publishable in a novel, becomes genuinely problematic when visualized. Even an R-rated film has limits, and filmmakers have to make some creative choices about what violence to include and what to imply. Third, some of these kills are so specific to the novel's internal logic, Patrick being killed by flying leeches that are manifestations of it, that translating them to screen requires significant technical and narrative justification that just might not fit the film's pacing or tone. For example, we're not really complaining that Patrick's animal-killing arc wasn't adapted to the screen, even if it means we're missing out on his very creative death. The impact on story and character. Even though these deaths don't appear in the films, the impact of the novel's more brutal approach to violence shapes how we should understand Pennywise as a threat. The book takes time to show us the depravity of this entity in ways the film, by necessity, has to abbreviate or omit. The novel gives us the full horror, complete picture of what Pennywise is capable of, and it makes the entity feel far more threatening because we've seen the meticulous brutality of its kills. The movie version of Pennywise is scary, don't get us wrong. Bill Skarsgård's performance is genuinely unsettling, but the book version is a nightmare creature that doesn't just kill, it plays, it torments, it explores the boundaries of human suffering, and the detailed descriptions of deaths like Patrick's or Victor's make it feel more alien, more incomprehensibly evil. Marvelous verdict. The book stays scary. Look, we love the It films. We think Andy Muschietti did an incredible job adapting that massive novel into something watchable and genuinely terrifying. But there's a reason Stephen King's original novel remains the definitive version of this story for so many people, because King took the time to explore the absolute depths of Pennywise's evil in ways that cinema, with its limitations and standards, simply cannot. The kills we discussed today, Georgie's arm being ripped off, Betty being bisected, Patrick being drained by leeches, Victor being decapitated, Belch being facially mutilated, these are the moments that make the novel so horrifying. These are the details that stick with readers decades after they've finished the book. These are the kills that prove Pennywise isn't just a scary clown, it's a fundamental force of evil that understands how to inflict maximum suffering. We think that's kind of the point. The book goes places the films can't, and the films adapt what they can in ways that still terrify audiences. It's a beautiful example of how different mediums can tell the same story in different ways while still capturing the essential horror at the story's core. Thanks for sticking with us right to the end of this one, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the darkest corners of It's novel, please smash that like button and subscribe for more horror franchise analysis. Let us know in the comments down below which one of these kills you would have liked to see on the screen as well, but otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.